Today, I want to talk about the value of health coaching. To do that, I engaged with one of our coaches, Julia Priest, who's been with us for a long time now. She's been a coach for 12 years in various avenues, has a specialty in epigenetic health. She's been working with athletes and now with our bone health population for over a year at least. And I wanted to bring her on because there are some things that, I'd love to talk about lifestyle, but there are some things that a coach can do to really facilitate the conversation. And if you aren't familiar with coaching, you should definitely listen to this because this might really ring true for you as something that you could definitely benefit from in your journey to improve your health, your bone health, and your health span. So please listen to this video, this interview with Julia Priest, and consider what health coaching could do for you on your journey. All right, Julia, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm really excited to have this discussion about health coaching, how coaching has impacted, I want to talk about us, but mostly our patients and how we've been able to work with our patients who are working on their bone health and really encouraging them through what I would consider some alternative pathways. So before we dig into the theories behind health coaching, give us a little bit of your background from your perspective. How did you get here? How did you end up in this spot?
Yeah, I asked myself that a lot. How did I get here? I really love where I am, and health coaching came to me through some of my educational background. I went to school for exercise science, and I coached a lot of athletes, a lot of cyclists. And then over time, I actually got more and more interested in physiology, and from there, did a fellowship and learned a little bit more about genetics. And really, I think from the get-go, I've been so passionate about helping people access behavior change that supported their health. So coaching is really the spot where you do that. It's like this cross-section of understanding some background physiology and understanding behavior change, and then collaborating with another individual. And I just love how spontaneous that can be too, because you never know what a patient is going to bring to the table. Like, what does their life look like? So that's a little bit about how I got here and maybe just a tidbit of what I see in coaching calls.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important part of what we do. And as we've grown this program, we have, obviously we are growing providers, but what we're growing more than that is the coaching side, because what we're finding is that people need certain touch points. And I want to kind of talk about those. But we're finding that with those touch points, keeping people engaged, keeping people and holding them accountable, but then also figuring out what it is specifically within their life that is preventing them from potentially achieving their goals. And that's what, as a doctor, I don't have time. Even though we spend an hour with our patients, we're spending time going over the biomarkers. We're talking about the program, the supplements, the medications, the hormones, the whatever. I can't get into that space. And that's why I think coaching is such a critical part. But coaching is pretty, for some people, new. For some people, they consider it like it's a woo-woo thing. Like, I don't want somebody in my head. But there's a lot of science behind this, and the way that you coach people, and I know our other coaches do too. Can you walk us through a little bit of kind of the background behind how you coach specifically, and what are the tools that you're using to help somebody to transcend to that next level?
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, coaching is really founded in a lot of principles that you would find in a psychology background. So a lot of behavior change is really the root for that kind of methodology. The trans-theoretical model of change is one that I use quite heavily in coaching. And this is just something I kind of have running in the background, if you will, as I'm talking with patients. And the trans-theoretical model of change is going to use things like pre-contemplation, that's a stage, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. So as I'm kind of talking with someone, I'll be listening for different words that they might be using when describing their experience that might help me identify what stage they're in. And none of those stages are wrong or better. They just simply are where you might be. So I can kind of talk to some of the verbiage that I hear from patients that help me to kind of connect into where they might be along that journey, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's great because I've gotten really good at listening to these words as well. But again, I don't have I don't have time to dig into it. But then I can help direct the team to say, look, I can see there's something going on here. So yeah, some of these words that people use in their own verbiage, in their own mind, to themselves, to others about themselves, I think are so telling about where they are in this process. And a lot of the things that we are asking people to do is change. Right. So we're asking people to change their diet, change their lifestyle, change their sleep habits. All these things are a lot of changes. So yeah, please walk us through that. What do you see in somebody? Because I think somebody listening to this might be able to hear that and be like, oh man, that's me.
Yeah,
I'm stuck in this stage.
totally, which I love because then you get on to your story that you're telling yourself, right? Which is a whole another
Right.
fun thing. But so pre-contemplation, that's that stage where you're just like kind of gathering conversations, maybe watching TikToks or watching YouTube videos. It's just kind of like this fantasy world where you're pre-contemplating. Nothing is decided. And that's a lot of what ifs. It's just kind of exploratory. You don't have an informed opinion on that. And then you kind of move into contemplation. And that's where I'll hear people say the word could. I could do something like that. Or maybe I could try this or that. That's that contemplation phase where you're almost starting to like try on the outfit a little bit. Like, oh, I wonder what it would look if I did this or that. A lot of coulds. And then it very fluidly moves into preparation. What if I would do that? So this is more like rearranging life to get ready to do that thing. So it's identity shift in this like preparation phase that you see a lot. And then you move into action phase. And that's where we're doing things. So there's more measurement available in the action phase. You can say, yes, I did do this. The words I am happen a lot. I did happen a lot in the action phase. And then maintenance is again, some I ams, I keep on, I'm really good at. There's almost like a confidence that sometimes can start to ping in a little bit on that action and maintenance phase. Action is where we build a lot of self-efficacy. Maintenance is a little bit more, we're just rolling with it. And then finally, there's that relapse phase, which it's actually one of my favorite parts of the model because it acknowledges that we can and will relapse. And that relapse might either be us bumping into an obstacle, or it could be a complete redefinition of our needs. So you might get new information about your health that causes a relapse in that whole behavior change. But it's not a negative relapse. It's like a rebuilding more than anything. So I hope that helps a little bit. I get real excited and kind of ramble on
Yeah,
this
no,
stuff.
and it's great. There are a couple of things I want to touch on there that I think
Yeah.
are so important. And one is, I think relapse is a word that unfortunately has gotten a really negative connotation because we hear it a lot in the realm of recovery, right? So with addiction and recovery and relapse. But I agree. I like to look at it not as a negative, right? So it's for me, it's a realignment. It is just part of the journey, So like if it is, even if we are in a recovery from addiction, it's still part of the journey. It's part of recovery. And it shouldn't necessarily be viewed as negative, except for whatever happened when you relapsed. But from our perspective, like if this is, let's say you're on an exercise journey and you're moving forward and you're progressively overloading and you're somebody who's never worked out before. This is so common in our audience, right? So somebody who's never worked out before and you're doing something and then you just kind of like something shifts, your schedule changes, some kind of priority changes. And all of a sudden you're like, man, I haven't been lifting my weights in a couple of weeks. Like what happened, and it's not necessarily that it was bad. You just got off track. And so we consider this a relapse, but then we just need to realign, readjust, and reevaluate priorities. And that's where that having a coach can be so helpful, because this has happened to me so many times on my journey of the development of the team and my own life personally. When something changes and I sit down with my coach and she's like, hey, I just want to check in with you on this. And I'm like, oh man, I kind of forgot about that. Right. Like that sort of dropped off my radar. And that's what I think. Relapse is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a realignment. Well, something you mentioned in the action and maintenance areas that I think is really critical is the verbiage around I could, I would, what if I did, and I am. And I love that transition into I am. And I see some of our patients who used to be in the, I could lift weights or I could eat better. I'm thinking about it, right? Like I've watched your videos. It makes sense, but I'm not there yet. Versus I am eating for my health. I am weightlifting every day. I am, like all the things. And we're like, wow, the people that are in the I am mode are crushing it. And getting people into that spot, again, such a powerful thing of coaching. Anything else on trans theoretical before we move on?
The other thing that I would just add on to the I am is there's also a lot of neural repatterning that goes on there, just in that word. So I would encourage people if they feel like they're just on that tipping edge of, I notice a lot of times I'm kind of pacifying the action. Like I'm not getting all the way to that action. I'm kind of stuck in this contemplation phase. Check in on your feelings a little bit. Make sure there's true alignment, because sometimes the gap is misalignment, and that's okay. But if there is alignment, try to pull in that I am phrase a little bit and just knock it around in your brain. And you'll find often that you have more propensity to lean into those things that you're trying to get yourself to do.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's really powerful. So then another one that I've heard you talk about is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And I've been exposed to this now for years and years. My wife has gone down this journey in her own path in career development, company development, in the realm of weight loss. But how does CBT work from your perspective? How are you using this for our clients and patients?
Yeah. So the cognitive behavioral theory is the concept that our thoughts, our emotions, our body sensations, and behavior are all connected, and what we think and do affects the way that we feel. In health coaching, there are times that I'm trying to open up an environment where all of those components can really have some space and acknowledgement. Because I think one of the biggest, most powerful things we have in medicine is knowing and learning the what's. So the what to do's are there, right? And then it's getting everything on board in terms of the feedback from our body, the senses and the emotions, the thoughts, and like putting those all together in a way that's going to serve the what's, or the outcome that maybe you showed up for. But that's what I usually do with cognitive behavioral theory. You might hear me ask questions of, how are you feeling today? What's showing up for you today? What are your thoughts around that goal or that focus area? How do you think about your exercise routine? What are the things you feel in your body before you exercise? And sometimes it's not pleasant. And that actually is, I'm so excited when somebody tells me that something sucks or that they hate it. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Let's talk about that. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Well, and I hear these things too, because it's really telling when I love the follow-up visit, like our 6-month visit with our patients, where I spend a little bit more time just digging into the lifestyle stuff. I still don't have time to coach, but at least I can sort of plug in.
Yeah.
And I will hear comments like, it's really hard to eat this much protein. It's it's painful when I do resistance training because of my knee arthritis. And so you start hearing these words like, and they're connected to these emotions, like it's hard, it's painful, I really struggle to, I am sad about, right? And you're like, wow, like these are really big areas for potential improvement. We know that we need to do the what, but there's a lot of ways to do the what. So let's figure out a way to do the what that works for you, or maybe potentially even working on your emotional response. Like we get to choose how we respond to things, right? So especially with food, I think it's such a huge one. I see so many people get wrapped around this idea that like, man, it's a lot of food, or they're like, it's like, oh man, it's a lot of saturated fat, but then we can use objective data to say, okay, I hear you. You have this fear around saturated fat. What is that bringing up for you? Tell me more about that. And they're like, oh, well, it's heart disease. I'm like, well, cool, but your lipids look better. Your inflammation's down. Your metabolic biomarkers look so much better. And they're like, oh, so maybe this is a good fuel for me. And then you ask them later, like, what are your thoughts around eating all this saturated fat? And they're like, I love it. Like, cool.
Mhm.
So then they're going to feel better about their food. And so I've seen this work so well, but it is so hard to be able to capture all these things, especially in the time that I have with somebody. So how often are you meeting with our patients and working through kind of some of these two things? And there's another big topic I want to talk about here, but how often are you meeting with our patients in, on average, let's start there.
Yeah. So really, I've seen a lot of great use of the coaching that we offer. So monthly is usually when I'm getting to visit with patients. There's a really nice cadence. It's enough time for people to go work on things. You also don't feel like somebody's checking on your over your shoulder every other day, right? Like sometimes too much check-in is annoying for some folks. So I love the
Mm-hmm.
month cadence. And then there's a lot of patients that might get excited about something, and we just have a text banter going on through our EMR. And so, when there are these like high points of either discovery or low points of like, hey, I thought this would work and it blew up, I might get more messages for a period of time, and we kind of work through that, which I love because humans, like we both are one, right? There are times where you've got really big high points and you want to share that with someone, and you might not want to wait 3 more weeks to work through that. So I really like how we have things set up in terms of our communication with patients.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the back and forth, the asynchronous communication, because we do it on the medical side as well, and we spend a lot of time in this asynchronous communication. And then they're also meeting with their dietitian in the midst of that too. And so they have this sort of like every 2 week touch point, and then plus the administrative folks who are reaching out as well. And we've played with that back and forth, but we've found that to be the sweet spot. And I find that the initial way that we used to treat patients with the kind of one-off consultation, deliver them some thoughts, the success rate was so low
Mm-hmm.
because they're excited up front, but it's the implementation that really matters. And so that actually brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about is this whole idea of goal setting, which some people are goal setting gurus. And so I really appreciate that. But I think a lot of people sort of miss out on the ability to understand how to set a goal realistically and how to set a goal in a way that they can likely achieve it. And then they set these unrealistic goals and they fail at achieving them. And then it's this downward spiral of like, I'm terrible, I can't succeed, like blah, 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 blah. So walk us through goal setting from your perspective. How are you helping people that are struggling with osteoporosis and have all of these different overwhelming things to do? How do you help them to climb that ladder?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will start by being really transparent. There are times where I have a despise for goal setting. And I really had to work through that a little bit and find out if that was my personal baggage with the pressure of goal setting or if there was something else there. And what I've discovered over time is that I feel stronger about coaching with goal setting when I have a understanding of the patient's alignment with their goals. So like when folks are coming to a coaching call ready to set goals, I do interview a little bit for some of the feelings, for some of the thoughts from the cognitive behavioral theory to make sure that there's alignment. Because I think what I discovered is without some of that alignment, you can create as many nice, smart goals and goals as you want, but you likely will not get there because there is a deep knowing that is mismatching with the goal that you're setting. All that being said, I do use SMART goals when there is good alignment, when we're ready to go. And maybe there's not, but maybe the patient just says, I want to set a goal, right? We'll go there. A SMART goal is some framework that's set up to do a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound goal. So we just work through that scaffolding and start to deconstruct a goal. Oftentimes the goals are so big, we have to go way smaller. That's almost always the funnel that I see us traveling down is the let's make it smaller, let's make it smaller, let's make it smaller, which I'm sure you see a little bit too as you're working through patient visits. But yeah, measurable and attainable are probably my favorite parts of that model. Attainable is the one where really funneling it down, really making it smaller is key.
Yeah, and I think that with the SMART goal acronym, and for those that aren't familiar with it, it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and either time bound or timely. Or there's a couple of different ways to say that. I think that the most common error that I see, because I'm seeing it up front, like you're working with them through it. They just tell me their goal, and most often it's not specific.
Yeah.
I want to get stronger. Okay, cool. What does that mean? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to improve my bone health. Based off of what? I want to feel better in my body. That's an awesome goal, but let's get more specific. What do you actually want to see?
Yeah.
And so again, like that's where, as a physician, I see it and I'm like, yes, these are our top 3 focuses, but I need you, Julia, to really dive into that with them so they can really set those goals. Because a lot of times, like I want to feel quote unquote better in my body will require 5 different goals. We can't do that in one goal. So I find that, goal setting is really important and often done terribly, even by people that know how to set goals. I had a patient once, and it was interesting because she was a coach, and I'm always nervous when I talk to coaches about coaching stuff because they're going to outcoach me. But she's like, I'm an expert in SMART goals, and I said, cool. So what are your goals? And she listed off her goals, and I was like, none of those are SMART goals. Or you need to follow your own advice here, and let's get specific in your goals. So I think it's I hear it often, I know what to do. I just need to do it. And I hate it when people feel like they're stuck in that, because getting from that, what would really be like the contemplation or potentially preparation, right? Like, I know what to do. I just need to do it. I think a lot of times they don't understand that there is a very different mental space of one versus the other, of doing versus thinking, that preparing. And again, that's why I think coaching can be so powerful. Hey, so I hope you're enjoying this interview with Julia. I want to just take a moment to say that if you are struggling to put together your own program, if you've been listening to us for a while and you haven't joined our HealthSpan Nation, let me tell you about that for just 1 second. So our HealthSpan Nation is our community of people who are working together to improve their bone health and their health span. It's a community that has an online program. You can talk to each other, ask each other questions, and then we meet, myself and my team, with the entire community once a week in a Zoom like environment where we can answer questions in a topic-driven Q&A. We also have a content vault of previous content, and then we have a lot of discounts that we pass on to our HSN members. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go down in the description on YouTube and look for that link there, or you can go to our website at optimalhumanhealth.com/programs, and you'll be able to find information about HealthSpan Nation there as well. You mentioned something that I thought would be helpful just to dive into a little bit. And this is something that when we were, early on in our practice, we had more men than women as patients, as we were transitioning into working mostly on bone health. And what I find about working with men is that men are terrible at understanding what their feelings are. Women, I find, are better and they have a better, inner perspective. They're better at pulling that out. So this is actually a much easier conversation with our female patients than our male patients. But how do you find that when somebody can identify their feelings, how do you use that as a tool to say, great, I'm glad you're feeling this. This is where we go from here. Like, how do you make that next step? Because a lot of times people can identify their feelings, but they don't know what to do with them. And they sort of feel like stuck in them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's so helpful to be there to support someone with their feelings. And acknowledgement is probably the first area I go to. So really giving people time. And sometimes I have to slow down and say, okay, 5 second pause, 5 second pause. I'm feeling scared. And the pause, right? And sometimes that pause brings even more knowing out of that. There are so many knowings behind our feelings, right? So I am scared, or I have fear, or I am angry. Pause. And that pause can bring so much fruitful information to the top. Usually what I experience is after that feeling is acknowledged, if there's time, there are then little pieces of fruit of action on that. I am scared because I don't feel like I have a support system if I fail at this. Whoa, that is huge. Okay, so we talk about failure. Well, what does failure mean to you? Is it good or bad? How can you add color to that failure, right? What does that mean? I won't have anyone there. Okay, well, identify people that you would like to support you. What would be conversations that you'd have with them, right? We get into all of these like really awesome things, but those are never known unless the feeling just has some space to be and can really
Yeah.
be met with curiosity and non-judgment. I think that's what you were asking me. I kind of went off
Yeah.
here, but I want to make
Yeah.
sure
No,
that's really
it's
answering.
great. Because you do hear this, it's hard again for people to come up with the feeling in the first place, but then once they do, digging into that, because a lot of times again, like I'll hear the feeling and I'm like, man, I wish I could dig into that, but I don't have
Mm-hmm.
time, and so we'll just let it go. But yeah, saying like I'm afraid of failure. Why? And then you just kind of walk down this pathway and you end up with something that's a lot of times very correctable, and
Mm-hmm.
they just haven't walked down the pathway to understand like, oh well, if I make this shift, then it all falls into line, and now I don't have that fear anymore.
Mm-hmm.
um, I had an interesting example of that where we didn't connect it initially. She kind of happened on its own. There's a patient who was really struggling with sleep. And I know one of the things that you will do is walk through sleep hygiene, and you'll talk to people about all the cool things that we can do for sleep. And then when I asked her at her 6-month follow-up, how's your sleep? And she said, oh my gosh, I sleep like a baby. It's amazing. And I'm like looking at my notes. I'm like, wait, you didn't sleep well, right? Like
Yeah,
what
yeah,
did
yeah,
we do?
yeah.
And she says, no, it's just that I'm not afraid of having a fracture anymore. And so we didn't, her DEXA wasn't different. We haven't like she doesn't have an updated REMS. She has no objective evidence that her bone is any better. All we did was show her that your fear around fracture is based off of, the space that you're in, but let's look at the data. And so we walked her through her statistics. We walked her through her biomarkers. We walked her through her likelihood of fracture. And she realized, man, I'm not fragile. I have a bone health issue that I can tackle, and I'm doing all the right things. I don't need to worry about this. And now she sleeps like a baby, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And so again, like we wouldn't have been able to get into that if we hadn't asked about like your fear. What is your fear? So I think that's really, really cool. I wanted to mention, you've kind of, we've sort of glanced over this a little bit. One of the tools that I find really helpful is journaling. And I know you and I have talked about journaling. I talk to all of our patients about it, and not everybody wants to do it, and that's totally cool. But can you give us a sense of like how you potentially use a tool like journaling with patients, and where you find it to be helpful for people?
Yeah. So journaling is a really helpful tool if you are someone who maybe identifies as in their head more often, or you maybe need a different kind of relief than just talking to someone. Maybe you process a little more slowly, or you process so quickly, journaling actually slows you down enough to write it out. So I
Mm-hmm.
find maybe those characteristics really doing well with journaling. I use it a lot when someone is in contemplation phase.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're hanging out in contemplation phase. Why are we hanging out here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, go grab your pen and paper. Let's figure this out. There is a reason, likely, that you are contemplating and not acting. So let's really like find out what is in there and bring it out. And I think the other powerful thing of journaling, which it depends on the patient's comfort with vulnerability, but sometimes having someone else read your journal, especially if you don't realize that they will do that, but you feel comfortable to share that
Mm-hmm.
retrospectively, can be, I mean, that's an inside look at somebody's soul that I would never have otherwise, right? And if you feel
Right.
comfortable to really work through that collaboratively, you can yield a lot of behavior change,
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
that takes a lot of trust.
It does.
Um,
It does. Yeah.
yeah. So my coach Sally, I'll talk a little bit about her in a second. So my coach Sally, she uses a technique she calls a purge. So like lots of stuff happening. She's like, just like put it down on paper as if you're yelling at the paper,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's just like go 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 go. And then early on, she was like, and then I'll read it and then we can talk about it. And so then like I would send it to her and she would read it. And it's when she's reading it back to me, I'm like, no, this is stupid. Why would I even think that?
Yeah.
But then you learn the ability to do what she calls a talk back. So you purge and then you read back through it and then you write out actually how you really feel about it. And you can correct a lot of this thinking, these loops, these thought loops, just by putting it on paper and then talking back, and you're like, oh, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a really powerful tool for me as I was going through some of the challenges I've had in the last 4 years, making that transition to orthopedics, into the space that we're in now, and building the team and all the challenges of entrepreneurship and stuff. So I think that brings us to maybe our personal experience with coaching. I'm happy to start, and then I'd love to get yours. So I mentioned Sally. So Sally and we've been coaching together for, I don't know, 5 years. Long time. And I had some coaches before her as well. And I was introduced to coaching by my wife. Again, she built CBT into her weight loss program. And so we kind of learned about this idea of coaching, and it was very foreign to me. And I think that's pretty common for men, just to be like, I don't want to talk about that. It's like going to therapy. Like, I don't want to do that. But what I found really early on is that for me, having a coach, and I coach weekly, which is, my wife coaches every other week. And, like we said, you do monthly. Like there's different frequencies, but for me, weekly was really important because I was able to catch myself so early, and be able to make these adjustments, these micro adjustments that would have huge impact. And early on, it was really like, there were so many deep things that I really had never done. Like I didn't have great role models growing up. So I was really just like wandering aimlessly through life. And so it really helped to put me on a track, understand what my mission is, my purpose, my why behind what I do. And that has made all the difference in the world. So Sally, I really credit her to helping me to change around my life. She's helped me tremendously with my relationship with my wife, and really helping us to build and be the author of our lives, which is something that I think a lot of people don't feel empowered to do. I also have a business coach, Bedros Keuilian. So Bedros is a powerhouse. He's a monster. I mean, he would love to hear me describe him that way. But he's an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He has scaled, and sold multiple businesses, and he has an understanding of how to bring things to the forefront. Not so that you can, quote unquote, make money. A lot of times people think like, oh, entrepreneurs are just out to make money. No, it's the impact. How do I grow something that I can serve people with? And that's why when you look at what we do and how we've built it, it's not a particularly lucrative company, but it's a company that makes a big impact. And that's what I told him I wanted to build. So let's build a company where we can really help people to do the things we want them to do. And he's helped me do that. And without him, man, we would just be like, just wandering circular, like it would be a disaster. So having the right coach can make such a world of difference. So what about you? What have been your experiences with coaching?
Yeah, I have two. Well, first, it was awesome hearing about your coaching experience, and just, I know a lot of our patients admire you. So to hear you have coaching in your life, and like you really sit down to open Pandora's box and figure it out, I think was just so cool. And even working with you as a colleague, like it makes me feel excited that you use coaching as a tool too. But yeah, my experience, I would say that I have two main ones. One is athletic, and the other is personal in my own endeavors. So athletically, I've been coached many, many times, like I think a lot of us have been. And that is really data heavy. So I, as a cyclist, was coached with a power meter and a heart rate data and all of the wearables you could ever want. And it's all there for you to take a look. But what I found fascinating about the times where I was coached for cycling is honestly the biggest changes in my performance really came down to my ability to fail, and fail pretty hard. I know that's really cliche, but all of us, I think, at some point need failure and need to be supported in failure. And that's what I got out of my athletic coaching. Um, and then my kind of personal endeavors, I actually recently took Edie, one of our other health coaches, up on a tapping session. So she does emotional freedom technique, which is tapping with a bunch of different prompts as you're going through, and you're just working through what shows up. I was really fascinated by it. Like, does this work? What's going to happen? What's going to come out? And so much came out, like so much came out. And I think the biggest thing that she taught me in her coaching through the thoughts that were coming up and the feelings that were coming up is, what if your desired outcome? I was really trying to set up this workshop on the weekend for gravel cyclists to learn about their health. I wanted them to wear a CGM and get the supplements and do field testing. And it was going to be this awesome marriage of precision medicine and gravel cycling, which is like my bread and butter, right? And so it was going to be amazing, and everyone was going to sign up, and there's going to be a wait list, and I was just going to be ruling the world. And that was my outcome. And I had one sign up. And I was really down on myself. I was like, okay, so I have one friend who was like, poor Julia, let me sign up and come to her camp. And Edie just helped me work through so much about the limitations I was creating because I was so fixated on this one outcome being the thing that was going to happen. And when I was able to offer myself to see other learnings that I could have or just really be a part of that experience, it could be so much different than that result. There are other things learned, but I think that would be a takeaway for patients that I would like to just share for them is you may think that the outcome is this one narrow point on the map, but there's so much along the way that you could be learning as you try to change your diet to protein heavy. You might learn about your gut health. You might learn about new recipes you like. You might learn about people in your community who want to eat this way with you. Like all of these beautiful things are there if you can see them along the way and move away from your hyperfixation on how it should be. So yeah, that's a little recent anecdote.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. I actually interviewed Sally. I was checking to see if it was on our list. I don't even think it's up on our channel anymore because it was on the old Dr. Doug show. But I think the title of that interview was How to Fail.
Yeah.
Or like failing hard or like something like that. And it is like, I agree. It can be cliche, especially in like the coaching and therapy space, but it's something that so many people fear, just like fear of failure, and it can be paralyzing. And so they just don't do anything. And so I look at, like the way that we've gone about building this company, and you've been a part of this. I mean, honestly, you and I have been sort of like talking about this for years. And so you've seen some, what I would call failures, right? Like we launched some other things and we tried to serve some other populations. Like you just talked about, you're like, I'm going to create this thing. But it's not necessarily a failure. It's just part of the path. And we're like, wow, okay, well, I didn't have the traction there that I thought, or this isn't really the space that I really want to, it's like, doesn't serve my mission. This doesn't really want to spend my energy. And certainly you could view those as failures, but you could also view them as just stepping stones, So I look at where we've come, really happy with what we've built. I love how we treat our patients, and it took some pivots, some corners, to get here. And some people would look at those and be like, man, you failed. And be like, no, man, we just had a stepping stone, and we've just stepped up and we've moved on and we've elevated and we're serving people the way we want to serve people. And it's amazing. So again, having a coach though, to help me through that. And I just met with Bedros last night, and I was chatting with him about the struggles with building our new hormone company. And, man, maybe we should just like do it this way or this way. And he's like, no, like, what's your guiding star? What's your north? Like, what's your most important personal value? I'm like, integrity. He's like, right. So what's the integrity behind this? I'm like, man, you're right. So, forward we go. But that could have been chalked up as a failure and just like, let it go. We'll do it this other way. It's so much easier. It's the path of least resistance. So I'm actually glad you brought that up. Julia, I think we've gone long enough. Anything else that we want to leave the audience with? Anything else about coaching? Maybe, not everybody can work with us. We have a big international audience, and some people are kind of on their own path, and that's okay. How can somebody even find a coach? This has been a challenge for me. I worked through 5 or 6 coaches before I found Sally. How does somebody go about finding a coach? Is that something you can speak to?
Oh gosh, that I've never been asked that. And I've always been part of a precision medicine or, bone health or some kind of health offering where people have accessed me. So, I don't know the answer to just finding it. I know a lot of communities have local health coaches, and they'll market their services independently as small practitioners. I would say as a tip, don't be afraid to just have a few conversations with a
Totally.
coach and see if
Mm-hmm.
it's like a vibe fit for you too. All of us have different personalities. Maybe you are more of a action-based person and you want data and education. If a health coach is able to serve that up to you, then great, run with that health coach. Maybe you're more over in your feelings and you need somebody to help you journal and take a look at your journal and process that first. Like, go ahead and just find out what they're serving up a little bit in their general approach and go from there. That would be a tip, but I did not answer your
Yeah.
question how to find a good
Yeah, well,
coach.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard, and sorry, that was not a scripted question,
It's
but
okay.
no, it's just I do hear that a lot, and it's kind of the same thing when I talk about on the channel. I'm like, here, use this supplement. They're like, where do I get it? I'm like, I don't know. So I love to give people some guidance. And so for me, I mean, there's a ton of coaching programs out there, right? But I think the most important thing, even more so than like what's their certification, I would say really it's their approach, and do they jive with you, and are they somebody that you're going to be okay with them calling you on your
Yeah.
failures. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the first time that Sally, she called me on something that really like violated my own personal value of integrity, and she was like, Doug, I hate to tell you this, but that's not okay, and she kind of like went into it, and I was like, that's it, I'm firing you, we're done, and she was like, that's cool if you want to do that, but recognize you're doing this because you're mad at yourself, like you're violating your own personal integrity. I was like, dang it, Sally.
Yeah, so it
So
sounds like you actually respond well to a little bit of friction and accountability. Like you actually admire that in your coach.
well, I think we all need it at some level. It's the question
Mm-hmm.
of, do you trust your coach enough? Do you align with your coach enough that they can give you hard feedback?
Right.
And I needed that hard feedback at that point in my life, and so I would say finding that person that you can have that relationship with. It's almost like, I almost look at it a little bit like it's kind of like parenting. Like, I love being a friend to my kids, but I'm a father first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I need to be able to say, look, this is not going to improve our friendship right now, but I actually need to be your father right now. And I'm going to tell you something that's really hard. And that's the kind of relationship that you want. So interview, sit down, have a conversation, have another conversation,
Yep.
ask them things that would make you really uncomfortable, that would make them uncomfortable. And then if you guys are aligned, then awesome. And I will say too, Sally we are not aligned on like all things religious and political. Like, I'm not looking for that person. I'm looking for the person that is going to be able to look deep into me and call me out on breach of integrity. So whatever that means to whoever is listening to this that needs a coach, for what that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any last things you want to leave the audience with?
No, I think that was so great. I love kind of just poking at this concept of like, yeah, your coach is not there just to validate you. The coach is
Right.
collaborating with you. And that's a really key element, right? This is not just validation session time after time. So yeah, look for the right person. I love that tidbit. Ask them questions that might make you uncomfortable and them uncomfortable and see what happens, what shakes out there. That's a great test. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Julia. I hope that everybody found this helpful, and I'm so grateful that you are a part of our team. It was a couple of years to actually get you onto the team, so I hope you're glad that you're here. I'm certainly
So
grateful that
glad.
you're here.
So
Yeah.
glad. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Amazing
Julia.
place to be. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to this interview with Julia. I hope you found that helpful. And if you think that health coaching would be something that would be helpful for you, please consider looking for some resources locally. There are a ton of coaches out there. I wanted to bring this forward because we have found it to be so valuable in our program. And if you're looking for this, please find somebody that really jives with you, like we said. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for your attention.